starry nights when the moon is full and the world seems to stand still. The ever-present silence is interrupted by the sound of an engine far away, scurrying with haste, determined to be ahead of time. This is the sound of the post train. Percy the small engine was very proud of his post train. He felt his responsibilities deeply and always gave his best efforts to make sure it was never delayed or ran into any mishaps. When dawn would begin to break, his final job was to wait at the junction for the arrival of the newspaper train. This was the first passenger train of the day, but with the addition of an extra van coupled to the back. The newspapers would be transferred over to Percy's post train, and he would deliver them swiftly along Thomas's branch line before the shops and newsagents opened. But as time went on, the demand grew. Extra vans were added to the passenger train until eventually the vans outnumbered the coaches. The Fat Controller decided to give the newspaper train its own dedicated service. He chose Richard to be responsible for taking the train. "Oh, this is indeed a great honour, sir," smiled Richard. "I know you will do very well with the service," said the Fat Controller. "Well, at least it'll be a big improvement than using a small shunter on a post train," muttered James to the big engines. "Percy performs exceptionally well," boomed the Fat Controller. "He takes his timings as seriously as any express engine would, and is not conceited about it. Perhaps Percy could teach you a thing or two about that." James said no more. The Fat Controller left in silence, but it didn't last long. "I'm right though, aren't I?" "No, you are not," snorted Duck. "The Fat Controller trusts Percy with such an important train. Yeah, but with Richard pulling the newspaper train, it'll only be a matter of time until he takes over the post train. And what makes you think that?" "This is all speculation, of course," stuttered Richard. "Look at him, Doc," observed Gordon. "He is bigger, faster, and more reliable than Percy. His timings will be a vast improvement. He will no doubt arrive at the junction before Percy will. It's just a matter of fact. I don't mean to discredit the little lad, but there is a reason why night trains are handled by bigger engines. Just look at Henry with the Flying Kipper, or Boko and Bear sharing the midnight goods. I'm surprised such a prestigious duty as the post train has been in the charge of such a small engine for so long," grunted Gordon. "It's time he modernised to the idea." "Your ideas need to be modernised," burst out Duck. "You leave Percy and his post train alone." As the engines argued, Richard looked across the yards. There was Percy rolling sadly out of a siding. He had heard everything. Richard wanted to apologise for the bigger engine's behaviour and to reassure Percy he didn't want to take over the post train. But each time he arrived at the junction, Percy was never there. "What's been going on?" asked Daisy abruptly one day. "Oh, Daisy, I'm in a right pickle," sighed Richard. "The big engine's got a bit carried away, and said I might end up taking a post train from Percy." That explains why he's been so depressed recently," remarked Daisy. "Oh dear. Oh, please, Daisy, tell Percy not to worry. I don't want his post train." "You may not have a choice, darling. Remember, it is the Fat Controller who assigns who pulls what train. And if you end up doing a good job with the newspaper train, then I'm afraid it's inevitable." Richard suddenly smiled. "Then I know exactly what I have to do." "Oh, don't tell me you are thinking of delaying the newspaper train in order to look bad compared to Percy." Richard said nothing. He just sidled away, looking very pleased with himself. Oh, he is, isn't he? On the first morning of the newly dedicated newspaper train, Richard simmered quietly to himself at the station. Some boys were standing on the platform. They were up early for their train to school and had decided to admire Richard. They took down his number and looked him all over. Richard was too busy plotting his plan to notice the boys climbing onto his footplate. Their curiosity got the best of them, and one of the boys turned a wheel on Richard's tender. At that moment the driver and fireman arrived. "All right, lads, that's enough train spotting. Off you go," said the driver. The boys jumped down and wandered happily away. Presently, it was time for Richard to depart. As he tried to set off, his wheels slipped and sparks rocketed out of his funnel. "Phew! Oh, this train is heavier than I thought," puffed Richard. The driver was surprised too. He worked Richard hard as he thundered out of the station. More sparks showered onto the train. "Come on, come on, come on," panted Richard. He had wanted to hold back, but he hadn't expected this. At last, the fireman cried, "Look! It's not the train, it's us!" He pointed to the tender handbrake. The boys had wound the brake on, and Richard was dragging his tender along the line. Quickly, the fireman released the tender handbrake, and Richard began to pull the train with ease. "Phew, that's much better," he called in relief. But things weren't any better. Richard's sparks had doused the vans behind. One of the van's roofs was beginning to smoulder. As Richard reached the open main line, the guard noticed more smoke than usual drifting past his brake van. He looked ahead and was surprised to see flames were coming from the vans. Richard nor his driver or fireman had noticed. The guard blew his whistle as loudly as he could to attract their attention. At last, they looked back. "Good grief!" exclaimed the driver. "We're on fire!" "Fire? Fire!" cried Richard. He shot forwards in panic and raced down the line. At the junction, Percy had arrived ahead of schedule and was waiting for the arrival of the newspaper train. Suddenly, Richard tore into the station. He screeched to an emergency stop and came to a halt at the platform as half of his train was engulfed in flames. "Get him out! Get him out!" shouted the station master. "It'll spread into the station!" Richard tried to pull away, but he couldn't. "Oh, I can't! He panicked as his wheels lost their grip on the rails. Percy quickly sprang into action. He hurried in front of Richard and with a mighty heave pulled the train clear of the station. With no time to lose, Richard was uncoupled and Percy pulled him safely from the burning train. After the fire brigade had put the fire out, Richard and Percy sat quietly together in the yards. Richard broke the silence. "Not a very good debut run, was it?" Percy gave a small smile. "You know, I had almost conceded to the idea of handing over the post train to you," said Percy. "Gordon is right. Well, sort of. I have been running the post train for a long time, and I'm sure you would do a better job of it than me." No, that's not true." "But," interrupted Percy, "Daisy told me you had something up your funnel." I didn't think you'd go this far to make me look good, but I must admit I'm touched. Wait, hang on a minute. To think you didn't want little old me to be outdone by you, that you go to all this effort. No, it's not like that. To set your train on fire. Oh, what? So the Fat Controller wouldn't promote you to the duty of pulling the post train. But Percy, it was all an accident. Oh, I didn't mean to set the newspaper train on fire. Sure you didn't, smiled Percy. Honestly, I was only going to hold back just a little. I didn't want to take your post train. I just couldn't imagine the post train without you, Percy. Percy still pulls the post train. He's very proud that he still does so. Richard was given another debut run with a newspaper train. He performed well, just as the big engines had predicted. But there was no more talk of Richard taking over Percy's post train. The only talk there was to be had was of Richard's calamity. Headline news, hot off the press.